So I just filmed part 1 of my natural labor and delivery story. If you haven't seen that yet, the link is below. You can click on that and watch it before you watch this, because this is part 2. And I am going to jump right in where I left off. I was in the tub, laboring, and obviously in transition. It was the most excruciating part of my labor, because I realize now that I was laying down in the bathtub, because the bath was not very deep, and I was laying down, and I had forgotten obviously everything I had read in my Bradley book of not to lay on your back because it is more painful. It's working against gravity. And we found out later that Levi was sunny side up, which, if somebody doesn't know what that is, it's when the baby is facing like your belly button versus facing your back. So obviously when they come out, like, the doctor sees their face first rather than the back of their head first. And what happens is when you're in labor, like, their head kind of like digs down into your back as they're moving down. So it definitely causes a lot more intense lower back pain when you are in labor. And obviously if you're laying on your back, the gravity is bringing them even further, which is exacerbating the issue, which obviously, if I had thought a little bit more, I probably would have been on all fours in the bath. That probably would have helped substantially. But, you know, hindsight's 20/20, and I was definitely not thinking that clearly at the time. And I know that Stephen was feeling pretty overwhelmed at that moment too. At about, I mean, it was probably, there was no clock in there, so I wasn't thinking to look at the clock at the time or anything like that, but I'm guessing based on timeline, it was probably like 4:45 a.m. when all of a sudden I just felt the urge, like, I needed to poop so bad. I was just like, and then so I remembered at that moment that meant that I was probably ready to push, and I knew he needed to get a nurse. So I was like, Stephen, you got to get a nurse now. I have to push or poop or something, just get a nurse. So he's like, okay. So he got the nurse. She brought a wheelchair, and Stephen wheeled me back to the room where they were going to have me deliver. And they didn't have it prepped. So I don't know. I'll probably talk a little bit about them being pretty unprepared at the hospital. I think after my story a little bit, but they called my doctor when I told them that, and he showed up within no, he had been at the hospital. But they paged him over, and he came right over. But they had called him when I was in the bath to let him know, that things were definitely progressing fairly rapidly. And obviously they had called him when I first showed up, so that he knew that I was in labor. And so he came right over, and he checked me, and he was like, yep, you're fully dilated, everything's face, you're looking good, ready to go, it's time to push. So by the time we were all set up in the room and he had checked me, it was 5 a.m. and I started pushing. And Stephen, I was on the bed and legs spread and feet up in the stirrups, and but I was kind of put forward a little bit, I guess, and Stephen was sitting behind me, and he was kind of using his body to help prop me up and kind of hold my hands and kind of lend me extra strength to when I was pushing. And I was really glad that he was there when I was pushing, and that he was behind me when I was pushing, because I just felt so supported and encouraged, and it was just between him and God, they're the reason I got through all of the last part of my labor, I'm telling you. It was just, I mean, obviously you know that it's going to be difficult, but until you do it, it was extremely difficult. And so I pushed from 5 a.m. to 5:55 a.m. and that's when Levi was born, 5:55 a.m., September 13th, 2012. And he came out, and they immediately put him up onto my chest. and Stephen and I were just able to hold him for a few minutes, and they were kind of doing their own thing kind of around us, but they let us have him for just a few minutes to just kind of have our moment in our own little world. And you know what I mean when you've had a child, just the world around you stops when your child is born. And as soon as he put him on my chest, Levi looked up. He like lifted his head and looked up at me and Stephen, and it was so incredible. It was so wonderful. And like since Stephen was right behind me, he was kind of able to look over my shoulder, and he's substantially taller than me, so it was pretty easy for him to see over the top of me. And we just like kind of sat there, and like Stephen had his arms wrapped around mine, and it was just such an incredible moment. And they just kind of let us be for a few minutes, and then they came up and just nicely asked if they could take him so that they could weigh him and get all of his stats and stuff. So they took him, and that was when my doctor had me push the placenta out. And I guess in retrospect, I didn't really think that it was going to be like that. I'm not really sure what I thought it was going to be. I had done enough research to know that I would need to push the placenta out, but I didn't expect it to be like that. I could feel it. I don't know. I guess I thought because I was going to push a larger baby out of me than the placenta was, that I wouldn't feel it so much, or that it would just come out right after the baby, and that it wouldn't be so much that I was pushing it specifically out. So that was kind of strange for me. I think in hindsight, I think I would warn myself to be a little bit more prepared for that. It didn't really hurt that badly, especially obviously compared to an 8-pound child coming out. But it was there, and it was obvious. So it was just unexpected, I guess. And then after I pushed the placenta out, and they were like telling us his stats, he was 8 pounds even, and he was 21 inches long, and he had all this beautiful dark hair, and like he was just so precious, obviously, I think so. But and then they got him all wrapped up and stuff and brought him back over and let us hold him, and I kind of unwrapped him and put him up against me. I was bare, and so the warmth, and I knew that was important for him to like smell me so that we could start building our bond, because I wanted to breastfeed, and so I just wanted to make sure that we were having as much skin to skin contact as possible. And while I was holding the baby, my doctor started stitching me up because I did get a 2nd-degree tear. And in retrospect, I definitely, next time, I think I will get an episiotomy. I did not want one this time. I asked him specifically not to. I mean, he even double-checked with me, triple-checked with me that I was sure that that's what I wanted. And I don't know, I didn't think that I wanted one, and I guess I should have thought a little bit more about the fact that I am super petite, and Levi was 8 pounds, and so that's a lot to come out of a really really petite person. I'm only 5'2", and I'm fairly slim, so I think it was more than I obviously could handle. I mean, and I know some women who didn't get an episiotomy and they didn't tear. I know plenty of women who didn't get an episiotomy and they did tear. But I think for myself, I will get an episiotomy next time. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I would imagine I would want to. Because I have heard that it does take longer for a tear to heal than it does an episiotomy, since it's just like a straight cut versus jagged tearing. But anyways, so they stitched me up, and they were like, okay, well, we're gonna get you something to eat really quick, and then we're gonna take you over to your room. So they brought me orange juice and steaming, like fresh out of the oven, blueberry muffins. And I hate blueberry muffins, or did hate blueberry muffins, I guess I should say. But those things were like manna from heaven. They were so so good. Oh my gosh, so good. And to this day now, I love blueberry muffins because of that. And so, you know, obviously I hadn't had anything to eat since dinner at like 6 o'clock that night. And I had thrown part of it up at like 2 a.m. So, you know, I was pretty empty. So, and I had also gotten a little dehydrated since they never got around to giving me an IV because I labored in the tub for so long. So they had to put an IV in me at the very end after I gave birth to Levi. So I didn't really want it to be in me for very long, so I chugged water like crazy so that they could take it out faster. So I ate, and like we just kind of were like looking at Levi, and it was just wonderful. And then we got up and we went to our room, and we were it was nice. We were able to get situated a little bit before family started coming in to see us. And so I think, I mean, you know, there's my story. And then, so I think in retrospect, just kind of looking back at everything, I am very thankful that I did a natural labor. It was extremely painful, but it was doable. Like, obviously, I got through it. I definitely think that moral support and praying, lots and lots of prayer, really helped me get through it. So I think I do understand why people do not want to do it naturally. It's extremely difficult to do. But I have to say, like, personally, I am really, really glad that I did. And I feel like it's a very empowering experience to be able to do it and to say that you've done it. And I realize that, things happen, and sometimes people who even want one can't have one. And so I'm just really thankful. I'm so thankful that there were no complications, that everything went smoothly, that I was able to have what I envisioned, because I know for so many women that they're not able to have the kind of labor experience that they want. And even though mine was difficult and there were a lot of unexpected things, I think that to some degree I was fairly unprepared for some things. I am very thankful that there were no complications and I was able to go through with my natural labor and delivery. And so in retrospect for that aspect, I'm extremely thankful that I did that that way. As for the hospital, I am not necessarily that happy with my hospital experience. My doctor is a completely separate entity from the hospital. He was incredible. From the time he showed up on, things changed. It was like night and day. But my labor experience in the hospital was not so great. They were not very helpful. They were not very nice. They did not want to comply with anything that I wanted for the most part. There were a couple of instances where they were fine with it, but if they didn't agree, they made sure that I knew about it. And they were not nice to my family. Most of all, there was one nurse that was wonderful. No matter what we asked for, she was super sweet, super kind. If she couldn't do it, she explained why. She was really, really wonderful. But the rest of them, like, they did not want to help us. Like, they did the bare minimum, and they made sure that we knew that they were doing us a favor. And they were not, like I said, they were not nice to my family. My mom and my sister stayed there all night, and we asked them specifically to give them updates, and they did not. And they would not, even after my family, and then my other sister showed up in the middle of the night, and they were asking questions, and they would not answer them. They would not give them help for anything. If my family asked for, if they could get a pitcher of water or something like that, they wouldn't even. They were like, there's a drinking fountain down the hall. And they were just very short with them and very unhelpful, and I didn't really appreciate that. And especially since we asked them to update when they could. I mean, obviously we realized that they had jobs to do, and and that they couldn't just be like messengers and run back and forth, and we totally realized that, but they didn't give them any updates at all. We even said, once Levi was born, we're like, hey, can someone go tell my family? And they didn't go tell my family. And so at like 6:15, my mom comes to the door and she's like, we're just making sure everybody's okay. So they didn't even like let them know that like me and Levi are fine, and like nothing. And so I don't know, maybe I'm just naive and I'm expecting too much. So I mean, like, maybe somebody who knows if that's normal or not, maybe leave a comment down below. I just feel like, maybe I am expecting too much and that's just totally normal. But I just feel like that someone should have been willing or able to at least deliver like 1 or 2 messages. At the very least, I feel like let my family know that the baby was born, I think would have been really, really nice. So, so there was that aspect of it. But like I said, as soon as my doctor showed up, things were completely different, other than them not telling my family. The nurses were super nice and super on it and just like really respectful. So I don't know if just my doctor showing up, I know that he's very respected there, that, maybe that made a difference. But I didn't like the double-sided nature of that. But after we had the baby and we went to our room and all of that, the nurses that came in to help us throughout and all of that, they were all so sweet, so wonderful, helpful. They did absolutely everything that they could to make sure that our time was wonderful. I mean, they let too many visitors in. They just anything that we wanted, we got. I mean, we were extremely spoiled after the fact, though. So I am thankful for that aspect. And we didn't have to share a room with another patient. So that aspect was really nice. So I feel like I have a few things that I feel like I would have liked to have gone differently. I mean, obviously, I feel like we all have some things that we would have liked to go differently about our labor and delivery. At least, it may be really big things, it may be really small things, but, I feel like those were my things that I wish were different. And going into the next child, whenever that does happen, I feel like having this experience documented, I feel like I will be a little bit more prepared. So anyways, I hope that, I'm so sorry that these were so long, but I hope that they were helpful and educational to you and entertaining or whatnot. And if you have any questions or comments or anything, please leave them below. I would love to have a discussion with you. And if anybody had similar experiences, please share. That's what I'm doing these videos for, is to interact with other women and people who have questions. So as usual, thank you so much for watching. Bye.